Upland and Lowland river landforms. And you know what? This is the part 5 of river environment. So that means there is the part 4, the part 3, the part 2, and also the part 1. So go check it out. It's already uploaded here. All right. So I must start with the learning objective because that's the first thing to do. So by the end of the lesson, okay, what should we be able to know or even to understand? All right. So by the end of the lesson, you should be able to know the difference between upland and lowland river landscapes. And also, you should describe the formation of those landscapes that we'll be talking about. All right. So that is it. Now let's start. So let's start with the upland landscapes. We have these. Okay, the upland features, we have waterfalls, we have gorges, we have V-shaped valleys, and we have interlocking spurs. All right. And now let's start with the waterfalls and gorges. Let's know what it is. Let's know how it's formed, right? So waterfalls form when there is a drop in the riverbed from one level to another. Okay, maybe the bed was just flat and then there's a drop now on that riverbed. Okay, the bed of the river. When there's a drop now, that's when we have waterfalls forming. When there's a drop in that, and what causes this is due to changes in the hardness of the rock where hard rock overlies soft rock. So maybe we have a hard rock on top and then a soft rock being overlaid by that hard rock. Now, what happens there? We have erosion taking place, and of course, hydraulic action and abrasions are the main erosional processes. Understood? So the soft rocks, you see, it's under the hard rock. Okay, it will kind of be eroded through the action of hydraulic action. Remember, I talked about hydraulic action in the previous video, okay, and also the abrasion, the process of river erosions, okay, the types of river erosion, okay. So the hard rock won't be eroded easily, but the soft rock, which is down under the hard rock, will be eroded. Okay, it will be eroded faster by those processes of hydraulic action and also abrasion, right? Okay, right. So the soft rock erodes quicker, undercutting the hard rock and creating what we call a plunge pool. So as the erosion will be taking place, it will erode that soft rock, and then what will be created down there will be a plunge pool. It's like a pool, like you understand, a pool. All right. So this leads to development of an overhang of hard rock, which eventually over time collapses. When it collapses, you see now it will be now a bed that is kind of broken. Okay, broken. Now there's another bed again on the downer part. You understand? So that thing that remains there is what you call a waterfall. Okay, now the process begins again and the waterfall retreats upstream, leaving a steep-sided gorge. So that process will be continuing. Remember, there's that soft rock here. The process will be continuing, leaving a overhang, and then for collapsing, creating another new waterfall. So that flat surface that is left there with some steep sides is what we call a gorge. Understood? So I believe now it's clear. You understand what a waterfall is and how it's formed and how that results in formation of those gorges. It's clear? All right. Now look at the picture. This is what I'm talking about. You have this hard rock, and the rock below is a soft rock. So erosion is taking place actually due to abrasion and also hydraulic action. All right. So as erosion is taking place there, it will create a plunge pool. So the plunge pool is this down here. All right. And then with time, you see now this hard rock will be kind of overhanging. That's what we call an overhang of hard rock. All right. And then as time goes, it will collapse, now creating that waterfall. And then the process will be continuing that way, and it will create some flat surfaces here with some steep-sided banks, which what we call a gorge. Understood? So that's all about waterfalls and gorges. Now let's go to the second one. Actually, let me say the third one because we've talked about waterfalls and gorges. V-shaped valleys. All right, how do they form? Now, remember in the in the upland side of the river, in the upper course of the river, vertical erosion is dominant. Okay. And when you talk about vertical erosion, is like erosion is taking place, like it's deepening the river. Understood? Not sideways. It's taking place as you go down the depth, all right? So it's dominant in the upper course of the river, all right? So this cuts down the riverbed and deepens the river. Of course, that's what happens in the vertical erosion. It's dominant in the upper course of the river, right? So it deepens the river as kind of deepens on the river, and that happens. Then weathering and mass movement leads to material from the valley sides collapsing into the river, forming a steep V-shaped valley. How? Weathering is the breakdown of rocks into small pieces, okay? And mass movement is now that movement of the broken down pieces of rock under the influence of gravity, all right? So weathering will be taking place, and then because now remember it has been deepened, let me use this picture to show you what will happen. So initially you will have this, you'll have this, and then vertical erosion is taking place, so it will deepen this river, and then what will happen will be having weathering occurring on this part here, you understand, on these side banks here, and then what will happen due to mass movement, of course, the movement of rock broken down particles due under the influence of gravity, it will now cause this place to kind of collapse, and then we leave this steep-sided V-shaped valley. Okay, so the remaining part is a V-shaped valley, which is a landform feature in the upper course of the river. Understood? Now let's move to the third one, interlocking spurs. Okay, you've heard of interlocking spurs? All right. Now, interlocking spurs are like steps along a river's journey through mountainous areas. All right. So what happens? As the river flows, it carves deep valleys with steep sides. All right. Now, this is known as interlocking spurs. How do they form? They form as the river winds around obstacles. So we have obstacles like hills, mountains, all right? So as the river winds around those obstacles, with time, that erosion that is being caused by that river shapes these spurs into a series of ridges, resembling steps. Actually, when you look at that picture, it's such a thing. Those are the interlocking spurs. So as the river flows along these maybe hills, valleys, it will kind of be eroding that place and shaping it into ridge like things. Okay, it will be shaping it like that, and then the end result will now be this kind of things we call interlocking spurs. Clear? All right, now let's move and look at the lowland landforms. Okay, so the lowland landforms, we have this, we have meanders, we have oxbow lakes, we have floodplains, we have levees. All right, I don't know whether that is the right pronunciation, levees or levees, I don't know the right one. You understand? Okay, so meanders, oxbow lakes, floodplains, and levees. Let's start with meanders. When you hear of a meander, that's just a bend in a river, right? So a meander is a bend in a river, right? Now, in lowland areas, lateral erosion is dominant. Remember, I talked about in upland areas, vertical erosion, which deepens the river, is dominant. But in lowland areas, lateral erosion is dominant, right? Now, meanders are formed through a combination of erosion and deposition along a river's coast. And remember, you're talking about lateral. Lateral, I mean the sideways, all right? So what happens, all right? On the inner bank, remember when there's a bend, just a small bend, we have the inner side of the bend, and then we have the outer side of the bend. So what happens on the inner side of the bend, we'll be having a slow movement of water as compared to the outer side of that bend, we'll be having faster movement of water. And what will that mean? When you have faster movement of water, erosion is dominant there as compared to where we have slow movement of water. That means deposition will be taking place there. All right, so on the inner bank, the inside bend of the curve where the water moves slowly, sediment is deposited. I think it's clear there. And then over time, the erosion on the outer bend, remember we've talked about erosion on the outer bend because water there flows faster, and deposition on the inner bend cause the meander to grow larger and more pronounced and leads to the meander migrating across the valley like that. So you'll have now that meander kind of pronounced, right? That meander pronounced. So always remember that due to lateral erosion, and it's because of erosion on the one side, which is in the outer side, happening faster as compared to erosion in the inner side, where we are having actually deposition of sediments. All right, that is it. Now we talk about this picture. Let's look at this picture. The slowest flow actually occurs on the inner side of the bend, and then on the outer side we have the fastest flow. That means we'll be having deposition in the inner side. Remember, the sediments are carried along. Okay, then the outer side now, because of the fast flow, then we are going to have that erosion taking place. This deposition like that. Understood? So with time, you see that now the meander is going to be pronounced as it's kind of happening. All right, look at that. So this is a meander. You can see on the inner side you're having deposition, on the outer side erosion, and still continuing in that order. Okay, see here, this is the outer side of that bend, this is the inner side. So there's deposition here, there's erosion here, there's deposition here on the inner side, erosion on the outer side. So like that, you find that kind of thing is happening. It's clear? Now let's look at oxbow lakes. Now oxbow lakes form through a natural process called meander cutoff. Okay, when we have that meander and it's cut off, whatever is going to happen, we're going to have that oxbow lake. Now let's look at it. Now initially a river flows in a winding path. Of course, you know that meandering path, okay, forming curves known as meanders. It's flowing in a winding path, forming curves known as meanders. Okay, so over time erosion occurs on the outer bend of the meander, which is so clear. I've already explained that, due to the faster flow of water, while deposition occurs on the inner bend where the water flows slower. So as the erosion continues on the outer bend, the neck of the meander, that is the narrow strip of land between two bends, becomes narrower. All right? Okay, look at that picture. Now, during times of high water flow, such as floods, the river may erode through narrow neck of the meander, creating a new, straighter channel. Okay, we look at that. The river now flows through the new channel, leaving behind an abandoned meander loop. Over time, the abandoned loop becomes cut off from the main river, forming an oxbow lake. Okay, so oxbow lakes are typically shaped like a curved or horse hoe, reflecting the former path of the river. Now look at this picture. So initially we are having this meandering, okay, happening. But now remember, as time goes, erosion will be happening on the outer side of the bend, deposition on the inner side. Here the same. So with time, you see this neck will be narrow, 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 and sometimes as time goes, it will kind of connect. Okay, when it will connect, remember deposition is happening here and it's happening here. So with time is going to have we are going to have this part connected, and when you have this part connected, because of this deposition, also this one will kind of connect. The deposits will kind of connect, and then you'll have now a separate thing. We'll have a flat river here, and then we'll have a separated river here, actually a meander that is cut off. All right, so this one is what we call an oxbow lake. But now here we'll be having now a straight flowing river. It's clear? That is oxbow lakes. All right, now let's talk about floodplains. There's the third one in the lowland landforms. Okay, so floodplains are flat expanses of land on either side of the river. Okay, the flat expanses of land on either side of the river. I'm not talking about the banks, but just about past the banks. Okay, those flat surface is what we call a floodplain, right? So how is it formed? Now, when a river floods, it overflows its banks. Remember, flooding is a process that normally happens in rivers. For example, they have a high rainfall maybe in certain place, in such a place, then it overfloods. Okay, so when it floods, remember it's carrying along with it sediments which are going to be deposited past the banks now. Okay, so sediment will be deposited into the adjacent land. Remember that is now overflowing the banks, so it's going to be deposited into either side of the banks. All right, and then over time repeated flooding leads to accumulation of layers of sediments, creating a flat and fertile area known as a floodplain. So over time, that deposition of sediments just by past the banks, such like due to maybe issues like flooding, is going to cause that formation of a thing we call a floodplain. All right. So the deposited sediment replenishes the soil and contributes to the fertility of the floodplain, making it suitable for agriculture because the sediment is so fertile. So it replenishes the soil and contributes to the fertility of that. So that's why we normally say that floodplains are always fertile. Now let's talk about levees. Now levee formation, let's look at how it's formed. So during floods, also this one happens during floods, rivers carry large amounts of sediment and deposit them along their banks. Okay, we're not talking about now past the banks, but we're talking about just along the banks. Okay, so sediments are deposited. The heavy ones normally are deposited just along the banks. Okay, you can use that argument. All right, then as flood waters recede, the deposited sediment builds up along the edges of the river channel, forming a natural embankments called levees. So just along those banks, as maybe floodwaters kind of go down or recede, the deposit sediments kind of will be building up, right? Along the edges of the river, forming natural embankments called levees. All right. Now, levees act as barriers that help contain floodwaters. In case maybe you want to know how is that helpful, maybe the levees are they may be helpful. They act as barriers that help contain floodwaters within the river channel, reducing the risk of flooding in surrounding areas. Clear? Now look at this. This is the floodplain. All right. But this one here, these are the levees because they form just near the river banks. All right. So wide flat valley created by meander migration, and then we have heaviest material deposited closer to the river, forming the levees. Because now, when flooding occurs, of course, the heavy material won't be traveling far. Okay, it will just be near the banks. Okay, so the heavy material that are deposited near the banks will now form the what we call levees. All right, but the small sediments will kind of be deposited now a bit far. Okay, so that one will form a floodplain, of course, you know that. And then we have that those embankments which you call levees. So that's all about levees. Now it's done. Now let's look at let's revise some commonly asked questions. Okay. Remember, after talking about a certain topic, we have to look at the commonly asked questions. Actually, from 2017, I've just looked at the past papers up to this current year. Let's look at the questions. Okay, so study figure 1B in the resource booklet and then identify the river landforms. Look at that. So a river landforms in Hong Kong. Look at that. What do you think? It's so clear, guys. When you have a fall in the bed of the river, we are having a waterfall. Okay, so that's a waterfall. Then we go to the next question. Explain the formation of a river meander. Okay, what do you think? What do you think about meander? How is it formed? Okay. So don't forget it's due to lateral erosion. Lateral means the sideways. As the river kind of reaches a bend, the outer side of the bend is eroded faster as compared to the inner side of the bend where deposition is taking place. So because of that, it's going to be eroding the outer side and then depositing on the outer side. So it kind of causing that bend, all right? That pronounced bend, which is now resulting into a meander, all right? So we award 1 mark. Remember the instruction is you explain the formation of a river meander. So we award 1 mark for initial point, okay, and 3 further marks for the extension of this point up to a maximum of 4 points. All right. So 1 mark for the initial point that you say, all right, and the 3 further for now the extension of the point as you are trying now to explain. All right, so you need to identify stages in the development of a landform. Then marks can be awarded for description of stages. Now let's look at this. So river flows fastest on the outside bend, and then river flows slowest on the inside bend. So on the inner bend deposition occurs, okay, because there is more friction here, and then outer bend occurs because erosion actually is taking place here. The river erodes and deposits laterally, then we can accept any other. So this is just the guidance to understand in terms of explaining how a meander is formed. Right, now we move to the next question. Study figure 1B in the resource booklet and then identify the river valley landform marked X. What is that? We just talked about this, so what do you think it is? Okay, those are just interlocking spars. Okay, that is it. That is interlocking spars. So some books you can say they can say spar, just a spar, right? Spar or interlocking spar, or it's the same. Then we'll go to the next question. Explain the formation of a floodplain. Okay. What do you think? A floodplain. It actually happens after flood, from the word floodplain. So it happens after flood. So the plain that forms after that flood, right? So a floodplain occurs when there is a flood, and then it occurs just. I think it's clear, guys. I explained that. So a floodplain is the area directly adjacent to the riverbank and occurs in the lower course of the river. Okay, that's clear. Forms when the river discharge is high and the river bursts its banks as water may infiltrate the soil, it leaving behind a layer of material which builds up to form floodplain. So you look at the distribution of marks here. So we award 1 mark for initial point and 3 further marks for explanation. So as you're explaining your point, right? Or you can say this lateral erosion, the outside of the bends wears away valley sides or slopes, and then so that the valley floor becomes wider and flatter and covered in alluvium when the river is in flood. So I think it's so clear, guys. I don't need to explain a lot here because we've already talked about that, right? Let's move to the next question. Study figure 1B in the resource booklet, identify the feature labeled X. So which feature can you see there? Just look at it cleanly. This is the feature labeled X. So which feature is that? If you say the Oxbow Lake, you are wrong. There's no separated part of that, because the Oxbow Lake is separated. So the answer must be a meander, because the erosion is what is going to maybe cause this part to connect. For example, when you're talking about an Oxbow Lake now, continuous erosion on this outer side, and then you position on the inner side, then the erosion on this outer side. Remember, this part, the outer side is here. This part, the outer side is here. So continuous of that erosion there will now make this maybe river to connect here, and then we have this separated. All right. So this can form an Oxbow Lake, but that has not happened. So this is still a meander. All right. So the process, the feature label X, that's a meander. And then you go to the next question, explain the formation of a waterfall. That's clear. I've explained that. So waterfall forms of a hard rock with softer rock below it, and the soft rock is more easily eroded. So over time, this continues to create an overhang, which eventually collapses. Okay. So in case you want to go further and explain, maybe as time goes, it retreats and then forming a steep-sided flat bed area called a gorge. It's fine. It's okay. So that will be explaining the formation of a gorge. But a waterfall is because of hard rock, and then the one that is below is soft rock. So the soft rock is eroded, creating a plunge pool down there, and then later we'll be having an overhanging hard rock, which will then collapse, forming a waterfall. It's clear as that. Then we go to the next question. Study figure 1b in the resource booklet. Identify the landform labeled X. Look at the landform. That is simply a waterfall. Okay. Yeah, we go to the next question. Explain the formation of a levee. Okay, what do you think? Please understand the formation of floodplains and the formation of levees. Levees are the sediments. When the sediments are kind of heavy, the heavy sediments will be positioned just along the banks, just near those banks. Okay, the softer one we can extend to the past the banks. Okay, but the heavier material that are deposited just at the banks, will now call those things we call levees. I think it's clear. All right, now the answer is here. We award 1 mark for initial point, and then 3 further marks for explanation or extension of this point up to a maximum of 4, because the marks here are 4 more. So when water levels in the river rise and flat, larger sediment is deposited on the channel edges, and smaller sediment is spread over the floodplain. As this repeats, the levee grows taller, like that, just as easy as that. And then if we explain, then identify one landform usually found in the upper course of a river. Remember the upper course of the river, the features we found in the upper course of the river. We have interlocking spars. We have any other, you know them so easy. Okay, so delta, look at delta. Is it okay? Estuary, is it okay? Oxbow Lake, is it okay? Interlocking spars, is it okay? This is the answer, because Oxbow Lake is the one that forms down there, but waterfalls, gorges, those are in the upper course. All right, don't forget that. So that is it. The answer is interlocking spars. The answer cannot be A, as these are usually found in the lower course, B or C, as these are usually found in the middle course. All right, now let's go to the next question. Explain how erosion can form waterfalls. I think I've just explained that. Okay, so this explains. So 4 marks, 1 for initial point, and then 3 for further explanation. So make sure you explain fully so that you get your full marks. So where there is an area of hard rock, I've explained that. Then the soft rock, and then we have an overhang, which will then form a waterfall. I think that's clear. So explain how deposition leads to the formation of levees. Okay, you can explain that. When flooding occurs, the sediment rocks that are heavy will deposit just near the banks, and then continuous deposition with time will kind of create those embankments we call levees just near the river banks. Okay, so there an increase in river volume can lead to floods, which deposits silt on sides of rivers, and this builds up over time. So when a flood occurs, water bursts the river banks and deposits on each side, and further floods each time to change the height of the river bank. Okay, so the embankments that remains there, what you call levees. Right, and then study figure 1b in the resource booklet. Identify the river landform marked X. Look at that. What is that river landform marked X? Bravo, if you got it right, that is a meander. All right, then we will go to the next one. Replace the information about Oxbow Lake. What happens now in an Oxbow Lakes? So when you explain the formation of a meander, and then you say continuous erosion on the outer side is going to erode either side of that meander, which then will later connect, forming a flat river with a separated part, that part of the meander that is separated, and then with that part that's separated is what we call an Oxbow Lake. So all these points I remember these are 3 marks questions, so award 1 mark for the initial point, and then the further 3 marks. No, these are 4 marks question, okay? Further 3 marks for the extension of the point, all right? I think it's clear. Then you go to the next one, identify the river landforms at X. So this one is an Oxbow Lake, but if it's still not yet separated, that's still a meander, all right? Then explain the formation of a waterfall. This is very common. I'm repeating it because I didn't want to leave any question. So any question I was meeting about this on this topic, I was just bringing it along. So I think now it's clear you understand different ways of answering questions. You can use any that you feel is comfortable with you as you explain the formation of a waterfall, all right? Okay, now the next one, study figure 1B in the resource booklet, identify the type of mass movement. Which one is that? Look at that. I think this is simply a landslide. Yeah, it's just a landslide. Because remember, mass movement and weathering, don't forget that. Don't confuse the two. Mass movement is just the movement of broken down rock particles under the influence of gravity. So when you look at this, this is just a landslide. We have slumping, soil creep. Those ones I explained them in the previous video. So make sure you check it out. All right. And then explain the formation of interlocking spurs. I think I explained these there. So interlocking spurs, when a river maybe is going through obstacles like hills and valleys, you see, it's kind of going to carve those to a road and maybe carve those sides where it's going through into ridges that is called interlocking spurs. So in upland areas where the long profile is steep or V-shaped valley, the river cuts downwards by hydraulic action and abrasion. So the river swings side to side. It leaves higher land on each side, creating interlocking spurs. So the river moves, this is another response. As the river moves through the upper course, it cuts downwards through erosion such as abrasion. The river winds and bends to avoid the areas of hard rock. Continued repeated vertical erosion means that the part of the land sticks will create interlocking spurs. Or it can even be meeting hills, mountains, such like. And then so any good response, you're going to get your full marks. And remember, it's a 4-mark question. So 1 for the initial point, and then the other 3 for further explanation. So study figure 1B in the resource booklet and identify the feature of the river valley labeled X. Which one is that? Okay, look at these X, this whole part, okay? This is the valley sides. See that? River has burst its banks. So this part here, what do you call that? That's a floodplain. Okay, from the word floodplain. That's how it formed actually due to flooding. So we have a plain that is formed due to flooding. Floodplain. It's clear? So guys, that is the end of this video, and please make sure you watch out part 6 because the topic is not yet done. Once you're done, I think it's going to cover the last part. The part 6 is going to cover the last part, and then we finish with river environments. All right, so thank you. Make sure you subscribe, and then if you feel there's something you need to maybe to create a video, make sure you tell me so that in the comment section, so that I be able to maybe see if I'm able to record or create that video for you for learning purposes. So that is it. Ciao ciao.